Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Wade. I am the MLTI ambassador for this region. Um, as an ambassador, I work for the Department of Ed, but specifically with the Department of Innovation and MLTI. Um, my job is to help all of you, to work with all of you, to do whatever you need around technology integration. Um, I've taught for a very long time, and technology has always been a very big part of my teaching, specifically integration. So if there's something that you're working on and you're curious to learn some more about it, or you want to dive a little bit deeper, or see different applications, or you've heard something about a really cool application, or you want to try project-based learning, any of those things are things that I can help with. So please feel free to reach out and through email or through my link on the last slide. That'll take you to a bookings and you can schedule time. I can come to you or we can chat through Zoom, whatever works for you. So let's get started. This is creating assessments using Google Forms. If you're a math or science teacher or somebody who uses exponents, subscripts, variables, things like that in your teaching, you probably want to go watch the math one because in the math one, it talks specifically about how to get those pieces into a Google form. This one does not really get into that as much. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk real quick about the benefits of using forms for assessment. We'll go through and do it all, and then we'll get some data. We'll talk about sending the form to students and then looking at the results afterwards. Now, the idea here is I'm going to stop along the way, kind of pause, and give you an opportunity to kind of play along with me. I'm a big advocate for you learn by doing. So if that doesn't work for you, then you want to listen through the whole entire thing and then try it afterwards. That's fantastic. If you want to pause it, when I say pause to try it out, go for it. If you want to pause it along the way, when you feel the need to pause it to try something out, then please feel free to do that. This really is, it's asynchronous, so it's designed to work with whatever learning style you have. And if you get stuck, if you get halfway through this and you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't get it, then email me and we'll set up a time to do work on this together, side by side. I will come to you, or we can meet on Zoom and go through it at your pace with whatever meet you where you are, I guess is kind of the way they are. I know I'm kind of tired of hearing that phrase, but we'll totally do whatever you need to do if you're interested in learning more about this. So with further ado, let's get started. So let's talk about the benefits here. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take Google Forms and you're going to turn it into an assessment or a quiz is what they call it in this. What's nice about this is that when you do that, it will automatically calculate a score for you as long as you use certain types of questions, which we'll get to in a little bit. Certain questions don't automatically score. You have flexibility in the type of questions. Like I said, there's multiple choice, there's drop down, there's short answer, there's paragraph, there's kind of whatever you need to be able to make it work. The form allows for retakes, so there's an opportunity to give this out again. For instance, if you wanted this to be a quiz that's just taken once, and then they pass it in and that's it, then you have that opportunity. But if you wanted to use it more along the lines of an exit ticket where students can't be done with the exit ticket until they get every question right, then you can have it set up so that it will automatically allow students to be able to go back and do it again as many times as they need. You can take this form and assign it to a specific student, or you can give it to a whole class, or you can give it to multiple students. And it integrates with Google Classroom. It's a Google thing, so it'll integrate right into Google Classroom seamlessly. But the way that this also has the ability to be able to send out the form as a link, so you don't necessarily need to use Google Classroom to be able to get this out to students. You can absolutely just get the link and send it out via email if you want to. If you want to ask staff a question in forms or whatever, you can send the link out, and anybody with access can click on it and open it up. So let's get started with forms. I'm going to start here, and I apologize. I'm going to bounce back and forth between the slideshow and a forms document. Basically, everything I'm going to talk about is in the slideshow, which is the link below this link for the video. So you can kind of look at the slideshow as you need to, but I'm going to kind of move in between the slideshow and an actual Google form. So we're going to go to forms.google.com. So I'm going to go up here, put it in, forms.google.com, like that. And you get a blank form, and we're going to click on blank to get us started. Now, when you're here, you're going to notice a couple of things. I'm going to switch back to the slideshow real quick. I'll go start it along the top. You have here is the title, the untitled form, which is pretty straightforward. The little paint palette here, which we're not going to get into, but that's how you change the appearance. You change the colors of your form. The little I is going to be very important. We're going to use that a lot. That's the student view. The arrow is undo. The arrow the other way is redo. Send we'll get to in a few minutes. Title and description along the top. It requires a title, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a description. If you don't type anything in here, your title of your form will be untitled form. You have a question field down here, which is where you put your questions in. And then this is an options bar along the side, which we'll get to at the very end. So now that we're here and we've kind of got the lay of the land, let's start by setting up a quiz. So along the top, you have questions, responses, and settings. Questions is questions, responses are responses, but settings is where you want to start with this. So when you click on settings, the first one at the very top says, make this a quiz. If you want this to be a quiz and for it to self-grade itself when students hand it in, then you want to toggle this little button on. And when you do that, you get a whole bunch of new options. So the first one is release grades. So you can have Google Forms automatically send and show the score that students got when they took their assessment. If you don't want them to see it immediately for whatever reason, then you can turn it on for later and have it send it after when you tell them that you're ready to send it. Like you'll tell the form, go send it. So you get to choose which one you would choose, which one you prefer. These down below here, really what this is it really, you have to think of like a goal of your assessment. What is it exactly that you're trying to accomplish here with your assessment? What are you trying to measure? So when you're doing this, what type of assessment you're doing, these toggles will either be on or off depending on what your point, what the goal is of the assessment. So for instance, if you want students to be able to see which questions they answered incorrectly, there it is, you turn it on, okay? Or if you want to see which students, answers the students got correct afterwards, you can have that clicked on. Now, when it comes to these two specifically, again, it really depends on the goal. So for instance, let's say that your goal of your assessment was like an exit ticket or an entrance ticket, and you want them to keep trying this assessment until they get all the questions correct, right? You want them to stop after they get their score. You want them to stop. All right. And you think about this, go back to my notes. Okay, I got it. I'm ready to move on. I can go back and try this again. So if that's the goal of this, you don't want them to see which questions they missed because you want them to go back in there and try it again. Or maybe you do. Maybe you do want them to be able to see which questions they missed so that they know which questions that they should try to answer again because they knew which ones they got correct. The correct answer one, though, you'd want to toggle that off because what this does is it shows the correct answer. And that would defeat the purpose, right? So if the goal is an exit ticket and you wanted students to be able to try this again and again and again, having them see the correct answer really won't serve that purpose. They won't have time. They won't go back and look. They'll just click the right answer and be done, right? So if you wanted this to be more of a traditional quiz, then perhaps you would want to leave these on there because they can only turn it in once. So therefore, it doesn't matter if they see the correct answer or not. If this is an entrance ticket, for instance, and you wanted students to check where students are when they come into your room, you probably don't want them to see which answers they got correct and maybe not what they got incorrect. Again, it depends on the goals, but that's what this will do. The missed questions will show which ones that the students got incorrect. The correct answers will show the correct answer after the grade is released, which may or may not be important to you depending on what you're trying to assess or what you're doing with your assessment. Point values, students can see what the point value is, turn it on or turn it off, it's up to you. Down here is where you get to decide how much each question is worth. You can decide, you can set it here, but you can change it later. when you actually get to the question. If you want them all to be 10 points because you have 10 questions, that's fine. If you decide later on, you're like, well, this question is probably only worth 5 points, you can fix it when you can change it, I should say, when you get into the quiz. But you can adjust this here to be wherever you want, and you can have students see it or not see it, depending on, again, the goals of your assessment. So down here where it says responses, for this one, I always turn my collect email address button on. And here's why. When I've done this in the past, if you don't collect email addresses, then you have to put a question. The very first question you put up at the top is, what name, what's your name, right? You put your name, you type your name in there, and that's the name that goes with this. So there are two issues with that. First one is that it can make going through and checking responses later a little more tedious. Having an email address there, recognizing that email address because of your students' email addresses, is faster than going through the form and checking the names. The other thing is that there's nothing to stop anybody from putting in a different name, which we all know that there are people who would do that. So when you do collect email addresses, if you're in a Google school or you use Google Classroom, it will automatically collect the email. It will automatically put the email in. So there's no issue, no muss, no fuss. If you're not in a Google school, then students can put their email addresses in so that they have, so you have that record of who they are. Could they put in a fake one? Absolutely, they could. But that's why, for the most part, this works fantastic with schools that use Google as their email. But it is definitely useful for other people. So you can always go back and check too, obviously. Like if you see somebody is in there twice, then oh, well, somebody's messing with me. And then, process of elimination your way through it. So you can send a copy of the response to the students if you want to, turn that on or off. You can allow response editing, which means that once they finish their assessment, if they want to, they could go back in and fix any question that they had. That they were like, oh no, 2 + 2 is 4, not 5, and they go back in and fix it. Last one is require limited to one response. This would be if you're going to use a quiz and you want students to do this once and be done with it, then you would toggle that on. If you want students to be able to have multiple opportunities at it, then you would leave that off. The last one is presentation. Couple of little things, nothing too exciting in here, but just some basics. You can have a progress bar, so it'll say like you finished 2 out of 3 or whatever it might be, 5 out of 10. This one's kind of important if you're going to have students retake their assessment multiple times. It just shuffles the order of the questions around so that they're not always the same questions in the same order, so students can't memorize the answer as they work their way through. You can assign a confirmation message to it just by clicking edit. You can type in whatever you want. Good job. Good job. Please read until everyone is finished. Great. So you could put that in there and save it. And now that's what students will see after they finish their assessment. So that they click submit, and this message will pop up on the top. If you have this one toggled on, the show link to submit another response, this will show up underneath their view results button on their after they've hit submit. This will allow students to be able to take the assessment again or not. If you turned, here, let's show you real quick. If you turn limit to one response on, then that automatically turns off because you limited it to one response. If you turn this off, and you don't necessarily want to limit it to one response because you want students to be able to do this again if you ask them to, but you also don't want them to just go run right back in there and do it again, then you can turn this off. Limiting to one response means that email address will only be used one time, and then it won't let you do it again. So if you want students to be able to come back later and do this assessment after they've reviewed or practiced or did something else in the meantime, and you want them to do the assessment again, then don't limit to one response because they won't be able to get in there. But you also don't want them to just be able to run back in and do it again, then you can turn that off right there. I never toggle this. I never want my students to see everybody else, the summary of the responses. So it's just not something I want them to be able to do. And I always leave disable autoserve off as well, autosave off as well, just because if somebody stops in the middle because they don't feel good or they have to use the restroom or whatever, I want it to save automatically and not have to start all over again. So those are all the settings. So why don't we pause for a moment, go in and open up a blank form if you haven't already, and let's turn it into a quiz and think about this from the perspective of how do I want I have a quiz Monday, for instance, or I'm going to divide a quiz. I'm going to design a quiz next week, and I want students to be able to do it on Google Forms. What's that quiz going to look like for you? What does that assessment look like for you? What is that entrance ticket or that exit ticket? What does that look like for you right now and whatever it is that you're teaching? And is there a way that you can move that assessment or that exit ticket or whatever into a digital version so you can keep track of student responses? So play with it with that idea when you're thinking about the goals of your assessment and whether or not, especially missed questions, correct answers, and whether they can only do it once, all of those things. So pause for a moment and see what you can do with that. All right, so let's get going on how we write a question. Now that we've got the quiz set up or the assessment set up, now let's start by writing a question. So again, I'm going to flip over to the Google form. And first things first, we want to make sure that we put a title in here for the form to begin with. So I'm going to call this quick check, like that. I don't need a description, so I'm not going to put one in, but you're welcome to, because sometimes I've put directions in there so that the students know what it is exactly that I'm asking them to do. What's nice though is once you click, don't you type quick check in here, look up here. Once I click, it'll automatically, oops, I got to click it, sorry. Once you click it, it will automatically change the title to this. So that's always good. So let's get started on questions. There are lots and lots of different types of questions you can have. You use short answer paragraph, multiple choice, checkbox, drop down, file upload, linear, scale, multiple choice, and checkbox. Don't worry about date and time. These are really not something that you want to use. These are more for like an actual form, as a form is meant to be used, not necessarily like an assessment, whereas you might be checking to see if someone's available to have a meeting during a certain time or during a certain date. So don't worry about those two. Now I'm going to start with short answer, but what I want to do is I'm going to flip back over here for a second. In the slideshow is the definitions and how the different types of questions work. I'm going to go through it orally, but if you have this cheat sheet to come back to later on if you need it. So let's start with short answer. Short answer questions are just like that. They are, what is 2 plus 2? Right? Question mark. Short answer allows you to do is it allows you to just type an answer. Students to just type an answer in here. So they could type 2, or they could write the word, or they could type the numeral 4, or they could write the number, the word 4, whatever. Or if you're in, maybe they're doing quattro or whatever 4 is in French. But here down at the bottom is the answer key. And this is a really important piece of this. So when you click answer key, what you get is the ability to add answers to this short answer question, which means that it will automatically grade itself. The other thing you can do is you can adjust your point value over here as well. So I'll set this at 10 points. Now, with the short answers, you have a couple of choices which you could do with this. So let's say, for instance, that I want students to be able to put the number 4 and the word 4. But that's it. I don't want them to put quattro. I don't want them to put binary code on there to tell me what 4 is. These are the only 2 answers that I'm willing to accept. So I put these 2 answers in here, and then I click the box and say anything else that you pass in to me, any other answer you give me is wrong. It's not correct. But I can also go down here and add answer feedback. So up here, I could type in something feedback for the students to receive after they've checked their score. So for instance, I could say, good job. If the question was correct, click option 1. If the answer was incorrect, click option 2, right? And you're like, what are you talking about? What options? Well, here's what the thing is. Down here below, you have 2 boxes. This one right here is so you could add a video to this. So for instance, you could, when you click it, it opens up a YouTube link or a URL if you've already made your own video and you have it saved someplace. You can add a video in here. So for instance, if somebody got the answer incorrect, you could put in the directions. If the answer was incorrect, then watch the video, do the assessment again. You could absolutely put that in there. Or you could go down here and put a link in here and then have some text to display as well. So let's say if you get the answer right, I want you to go to Google, and this is going to be called option 1. I'm going to add it. And then I want, if you get it incorrect, I want you to go to Yahoo for some reason, right? Well, it doesn't really matter. You'll know where to send people. And I'm going to name this one option 2. And I'll add it. And now students, when they're done, and we'll show this in a minute, when they hit submit, they'll have these choices for them to work on depending on how they did on their question. Or instead of click option, it could be click option 1 if the answer was correct. If the answer is incorrect, watch the YouTube video, right? It's really up to you. You decide, or go to this link or whatever. It's really kind of up to you to decide. So I'm going to hit save. There's my feedback. There it is. I can edit it if I'm like, oh no, I messed this up. Hit the little pencil and you can edit it. If you want to delete it, hit the trash can. So now I have this question. I'm going to hit done. And I've got my correct answers, 4 and 4. I've got my question. It's 2 plus 2. I've got a short answer. I've set my answer key up. So let's see what this looks like for students. I'm going to hit preview. Ask me my email. And I'm going to put in 4. Then I'm going to hit submit. Now, I set this so I can only do it once. If I had set it so you could do it more than once, there would be a little thing down here that says submit quiz again. So I'm going to view my score. When I do this, I see that I got my answer correct. There's my feedback. I know I need to click option 1, so I click option 1, and off I go to Google. No muss, no fuss. So that's what it looks like from a student perspective. You got the point values up here, so you can see how many points you scored, and students know what to do next. So let's go back. I want to change. All right, so the next one is a paragraph. Now, a paragraph, just as it sounds, is going to be much longer than what a short answer could be. So because it's going to be longer, therefore, when you go click on answer key, there's no way to put in here all the different variations that you could get from a paragraph type of answer. You can add answer feedback and do the same thing as before. It would be more of a please read at your seat when finished, right? So students would see this when they were all done, or they could follow this link to go to a Newsella article or whatever. They could do whatever it is that you want them to do after they're finished with their paragraph. So I'm going to hit save. Now I can adjust my points again if I so desire to whatever I want them to be. The question I'm just going to leave the save because it doesn't matter. Then I'm hit done. So when students see this, they'll see it like this. What's your answer? And I say, the answer is 4, right? And then I put my email in. I'll hit submit. And when I go to view my score, it doesn't give me a score because I, as the teacher, have to go in and give a score to this and then release it, right? It tells me that I have an X here, but what it doesn't mean that I got it wrong. It just means that it's not scored yet. So you have to go in and score all of these paragraph answers on your own, which is fine. It's fantastic. Like, we can do it wherever you want to. And then when you're done, you can give feedback every single time. So here's my feedback here. When you go in to score them, you can give more feedback in whichever way you want to do. And students can then receive that feedback via email, and it should via email. I don't think it shows up in here. So let's get out of here. Paragraphs are a fantastic way of going about this, but you have to score it yourself. The next 3, multiple choice, checkboxes, and dropdown, these are all 3 will automatically automatically score the questions for you. So I'm going to put in, just like any multiple choice, it works the same. So I'm going to 4, 5, 10, and 12. I'm going to save the question here. I go to my answer key. There's my answer. Now, what's great about this with multiple choice and the other 2 with checkboxes and dropdowns is, just checkboxes, sorry, not dropdowns. You can assign multiple answers that are correct. So if this question was a little bit broader, then you can assign different answers to be correct, different choices to be correct. The difference is, so here I'll do 4 and 5 for now. And then I'll hit done. Again, you can change your points. Shows me which ones are correct here now that I'm looking at it. I'm going to go up to the eyeball. I'm going to do 2 plus 2 is 5. And I'm going to submit it. Oops, sorry, forgot my email. And I'll view my score, and it will tell me that I got the answer correct. There's my email. There's my point score. There's my values. But here's the thing. I can only pick, in the multiple choices, I can only pick one answer. Even though both 4 and 5 are correct, I can only pick one at a time. If you want students to be able to click more than one at a time, more than one answer, then you have to use a checkbox. Okay, I'm going to leave everything the same. The answers are still the same. I just changed it. When I go to preview, now I can click 2 answers. I can click more than one answer that is correct for this question. When I hit submit, I can view my score. And I know that I got my little green check mark. I got my 10 out of 10. I got my 2 questions right. I'm good to go. Notice how it doesn't tell me what the correct score is. I didn't put it in here. It just says I got it right. I'm good to go. Now, what's great about these 2 is when you go down to answer key for either one of them, for multiple choice or for drop down or for checkboxes, you now have 2 choices. You can do feedback when the answer is incorrect and feedback when the answer is correct. Those 2 will be completely different. So if it's an incorrect answer, maybe you put a YouTube link in there to show students what they need to do, or a link to go someplace else. If it's correct, maybe the next step is do work on something else for a little while, and here's the link that I want you to go to, or read this article, or whatever it might be. It's a little bit different than the other 2, but it gives you the ability to choose whether or not what feedback students see based on what their answer was. The last one is a drop down, which is basically the same thing. Oh, you can pick more than one. I thought you could only do one. That's good to know. And when students view this, it just is a drop down box instead of a checkbox. It's just drop down. So you can only choose one, but there can be multiple answers. So these are the 5 that are used the most often. These are probably the ones that, if given the opportunity, when I've used this in the past to do assessments, these are the 5 that I always pick. I rarely use the rest of them, but I do want you to know what they do. So I'm going to share what each one of these last 4 do. So the file upload is exactly the way it sounds. So I have a question. What is 2 plus 2? Rather than, or maybe it's a broader question, like for instance, write a story problem that shows 2 plus 2, right? And I don't want to do a paragraph. I want them to be able to have some choice in how they show that story problem, right? Maybe it's just typed out. Maybe it's a picture. You want to give some choices for students to be able to show their learning. So what you can do is you turn on this little button right here, and you can allow the different types that students will be able to pass in. So maybe it's a document, maybe it's a PDF, and a video, an audio, a drawing, and an image. And now what students will see, and again, there's no way to have an answer key for this because it's, they're literally passing in a doc. Like there's no way around it. So when I go to click the little eyeball at the top, I have write a story problem that shows 2 plus 2. I'll put my email in and I'll add a file. So I don't even know. Let's check. We'll do this one because I got it right here. So there it is. I'll hit submit. It's a file, so it'll take longer. And when I go to hit view score, I won't be able to see anything because there's no score yet. You as the teacher will have to physically go in and assign a score to this when you're done. You don't necessarily have to assign the score to the assessment. You can just put it in Infinite Campus or PowerSchool or whatever you use, Jumbo. Doesn't matter. Whatever you use is fine. But once you're ready, you hit this view folder, and that's where you'll find all the submissions the students have given you. Is it easier to, if you're a Google school and you're using Google Classroom? Google Classroom is much easier to do this in. I would never do this in a form, but maybe you will. Just so I'm showing you the options that it exists if you find that you want to try it this way. The last 3 are very specific to a very specific type of question that you might be looking for. A linear scale is a scale of like how you feel about something. So hate this, love this, right? And when you go to look at it, it's just that scale, right? That you like, how do you feel about something? Great for, how did you feel? Are you prepared for the assessment for tomorrow? Or just a quick poll or quick check-in with kids to see how they're doing. Do you feel like you understand the content? Whatever it might be. The last 2 are similar in terms of what the differences between them. They look exactly the same, but they do have differences, which are the same as the multiple choice and the checkboxes. So multiple choice grid what you have is, so let's do this. Let's do 4 and quattro. Oops, turn my cap locks on. Quattro, and I'll have 2, and I'll have dos, 3, trace. And I have an answer key with this one. Again, I can choose my answers, which ones are correct. I can add a certain amount of points to each one if I so desire. When I'm done, I hit done. When I view this as a student, this is what I see. Again, you can only choose one because this is a multiple choice setup. If you want to have students be able to check more than one answer at a time, you'd use a checkbox grid instead. Again, the answers all stayed the same. Whoops, not send, sorry, eyeball. And now I can pick more than one answer in each row and column, like that. Again, you can set an answer to this. You can do all the things you did previously when you do your answer key. You can add feedback. Oops. You can add feedback to it. Wait, why isn't it letting me do this? Oh, here, I am already there. To each of the questions, all those stuff inside. So that's the basics of how this works. A couple of little things, and then I'll give you a chance to pause and try this out for a second. On the bottom here, there's a couple of important little buttons that are left. This one is duplicate, which means that you can duplicate the question. It will take and make an exact copy of the previous question. If you're like, oop, I didn't want to do that, then you hit the delete trash can and off it'll go. The last little part here is to require a response in each row, but I'm going to switch this back up here to multiple choice real quick. When it says required, that means that you cannot turn this in. You cannot submit this quiz until you have filled this question out. When I go to look at this, you'll notice that there's a little red asterisk up here. There's a little red asterisk up here, right? Little red asterisks mean required. You have to answer the question. So if you don't, then you can't submit the question. So like, for instance, the answers, I'll clear this off real quick so I can show you. So I'll put my email in, but I'm not going to pick an answer. I'm just going to hit submit, and it won't let me submit it. It won't let me do anything with it until I give it an answer. Then I can hit submit. This is a really important piece. I honestly always make every single question I've ever done an assessment required, because if you don't make it required, then why are you assessing in the first place? So why don't we pause here for a moment while I get everything reset up again, and we'll let you practice kind of choosing and putting in answers and playing with the answer key buttons and all that stuff. And then we'll talk about this text bar on the side right here. All right, well, let's get started on the next part. We're going to look at this options bar here. Just for reference, on the slideshow, there's a slide that has what each one of those buttons does. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to get a new question. So I'm going to use the little plus in the circle to give me a new question. We'll default to multiple choice every time, which is fantastic. And again, you can feel like I'm always torn about multiple choice. Like, I don't like multiple choice as a general rule about writing questions, but it definitely serves its purpose depending on what your goal of the assessment is. So I added a new question. So let's look at this. If I've already built a form out as a quiz somewhere else, and I want to use some of the questions, maybe not all the questions, but some of the questions from that form in this new one, I go to import questions right here, and it allows me to look at previous versions of forms that I've created depending on what they are. So like, I've got all sorts of different forms that I've made here. So let's just pick, we'll pick this one, and I'll select it. And it asks me which one of these do I want to bring in. I'm just going to say the one. If I had more than one question, I would be able to choose different questions in here to include. If I didn't want this one, I could choose a different one. When I hit import question, it will automatically fill. There it is. And then when I click it, I can go down to answer key. Notice how when it automatically filled, it automatically brought the answer with it. But I could go in here just to double check, make sure that it's good, add some answer feedback depending on what I'm doing. So here I have this all ready to go. I can import it from a previous form that I might have used. This is the title and description. So I can, again, add another title to it if I wanted to. If I wanted to add a break in what was going on and I wanted to try a new title, so in a new set of directions, I could put it here. What's great is these 6 little dots right here. Notice how my cursor changes from changes from an arrow to this 4 arrows right here. But when I go to click on this, I can move it around and put it wherever I want. All of these questions in here and everything that's in a form, you can move depending on what you want. You can move it up and you can move it down depending on what you want to do with it. So that was the title and description. Again, everything has the 6 arrows there, so you can do that whenever. The next one, we're going to take a second and kind of explore a little bit. The add image over here, notice how this symbol and this symbol are the same. And when I go to answer key, whoops, sorry, I got to get back into, hold on. I haven't put any questions in yet. Let me write a question in real quick, just so I have this, so I can show you the options here. 44, 5, 7, 8. Okay. Notice how this image here, this one here, and this here are all the same. And when I hover over it, it tells me to add an image. They all do the same thing. They all add an image in, but where the image gets added changes depending on which one of these you use. So we'll start with this because this is where we're working. If, let's say, for instance, I'm doing an exceedingly long quiz for whatever reason, and in the middle, I want kids to be able to take a break and like just decompress for a second. So if I click this, let's just go over here and you can go to Google image searches or use a picture you already have. I'm just going to say dog, and we're just going to put a picture of a cute dog in there just as a break. And it'll come down here, and I'm going to say, take a break and look at this cute dog. Right? There it is. So now when students go to view this, they'll get the question up here. I'll put my email in. I'll do my 2 + 2. And then I'm like, oh, now I can take a break and look at this dog, right? If you have any other images, you can put them in there. It doesn't really matter what the image is. You can make it to, it can be something academic, like here's what you're going to do next, or read this paragraph, or whatever you want it to be. It's totally up to you. But that adds the image into the form itself, not to be confused with adding an image into a question. All right. So let's say that instead of 2 + 2, the question is which animal does this animal typically fight with? Question mark. And again, I'm going to use the dog example. So I'm going to add a dog's picture into my into the question itself. So I'm going to say, what animals do dogs fight with? So I'll put this one in there just for the heck of it. There it is. Now the picture is there. Which animal does this animal typically fight with? Then I'm going to go down here. 4 wouldn't make a lot of sense, but let's say I want to put let's say the answer is cat. So we'll put cat in, and I'm going to add a picture of a cat. Looks like my cat. And I also can put the word cat in here. And I'm going to add another picture. So the answer is cat. So I don't want to accidentally give them something that they might fight with. I don't know. Maybe they fight with emus. I don't know. But we'll just pretend they don't. I'm going to add a picture of an emu. I'm going to type the word emu on the top. And then I'm going to do an elephant. Say that. I have absolutely no idea if an elephant and a dog will fight with each other. Let's do this one. I'll write the word elephant. So there they are. Now, when students go to view this, boom, this is what they see. Which animal doesn't this animal typically fight with? They have cat, emu, elephant. So if you think about this from the perspective of universal design for learning, the idea is that you make every question, everything you do accessible to every student, regardless of what where their level is. So perhaps you might have students who will use these images because they feel more comfortable looking at a picture of something and then associate the word with the image, or maybe they just can't read. I've had students who are functionally illiterate in 7th and 8th grade. Their disability is such that they will never be able to read. And things like cat, emu, and elephant are beyond them. But they understand how images are. They understand what pictures are. They understand what these pictures are. So they can then answer the question and be able to be successful with the assessment. And then I can check their learning and know that they understand that cats fight with dogs. So that's why this is important to understand, is that the image parts are different. This one, inside of the question, we'll put an image into the question. This one will add the image down here as a part of the actual form, just as a separate entity altogether. Last part, the second to last one here is you can add a video, which is exactly the same thing. It will include itself just like the picture of the dog did. It will include down here as a separate part. There, you can't put video into the question yet. So what I would suggest is if you have a video, embed the video in like this and then put the question underneath it that answers the question that pertains to the video. So if this was, oops, let me get this down here. I want to go down, I'll pull the dog up. So there's the dog. Let's pretend this was a video. And my question below it says, now that you've watched the video, answer these questions about the video. The last part is this little equal sign right here. And what this equal sign does, I'm going to put one right here. Let me move it up, is that it adds a new section. So what this does, I'm going to pull the dog down here, and I'm going to pull the, where did it go down? Hold on. Will go? Should go. There it goes. All right. And the question, I want the question to go with it. So I'm going to drag this down and put it underneath the dog. So now this dog is a prompt of some sort, and the question goes with the prompt. What will happen is when students go to view this, they'll see this question first, and then there'll be a little next button, and then you get to determine where they go next. So they can continue to the next section. They can continue to section 2. If they were here and you wanted them to go to, let's put section 3. There's 2. It moved 3 down. That's weird. So let's say you wanted them to skip section 2 for whatever reason and go to section 3, then you could totally do that. And what you'll do, so I'll go section 2, and then I'll have the next one go to section 3. And when students look at this, what they'll see is the first question. I'll have to answer it because I can't hit next without it. Oops, I didn't put my email in. See, because it's required. Go to next. I'll have my next section, which I didn't put anything in, and then I'll go to my last section, which has the last thing that I was going to have students do. This is fantastic if you have students who need to have that separation between questions. So you could do one question, then another section, and put another question, another section, put another question, rather than having it all be one long set of questions like this. You could have it separate out by section and then title it whatever you want it to be, whatever that title is you want. So click check 2 and click check 3 or whatever. So that was what the options bar does. So let's take another break. And now you have some opportunity to play. Why don't you add another question, add some images, add some video in there. Maybe if you have a form already, you can import a question from something else, add a section in there just to play with it. Remember, you can always view it from a student's perspective by going up here to preview and seeing what it looks like for them. I'm going to clear this out, and when you come back, we'll talk about how to send this to students and to look at their responses. Okay, welcome back. I hope you had some, I hope you got your questions written so that you're ready to go. So now let's first start, let's start by talking about how it is exactly that you get this out to your students. So I've started here with a new assessment that I just made up. The idea here is that I can look at this as a student, right? And I've got 2 types of questions here for us to kind of see how they look on the response end of it. I've got just a multiple choice, and then I've got a paragraph question. So you've got it all done. You double checked it. Everything is solid. You're ready to go. So now you've double checked your settings. You make sure that you've set it up the way you want it to be set up. So you're ready to go. Now it's time to share. Hit the little purple box that says send, and you have a couple of options here. First, you can email it to anybody that you want to email it to. You can put the subject line in there and a message, and then include the form in the email. And you can set it this way. You can also add collaborators. So if you wanted more than one person to be able to edit this, you could add them in there just like you can with all the rest of the Google Suite stuff. I have honestly, I've used forms as assessments for quite a long time, and I don't think I've ever used this once. I always use the link, and I always shorten the link because it's always too long. So the reason that I always use the link is because if I'm in an email, so let's say, for instance, I was emailing this to staff, for instance, or a group of students that I have, a class of students that I have, rather than, I don't want to spend all the time to put everybody's individual email addresses in here. That takes too long. So what I would do is I would go to my email service, whatever I use for email at the school, whatever it might be, where it already has groups set up inside of it, and I would paste the link along with a message into that email. So I don't have to type all that in there. You could also just take this link and put it in Google Classroom and put the directions to what I would like you to do in the link right there. That way, when the students go to open up Google Classroom or whatever learning management system you use, whether it be Seesaw or whatever, it doesn't matter, then that link would be there for them to see and to click on and to go and do their assessment. If you're super tech savvy and you know how to type, how to use HTML on a website, you can embed it in there. But I have no idea how to do that, so I'm not going to. I always use the embed. I always use the send as a link. Always, I've never, ever, ever, like I said, use the email address. I always send the link. So once you get this, you can copy it, paste it, put it wherever it is that you want to do. So let's copy this real quick, and I'll paste it in here, and we'll go to it, and it will pop right up. And there it is for me to see. So now students have done it. They've gone through, they've done your assessments, and now they're ready to, now you're ready to look at their responses. So you go over here to responses, and you'll see the number of responses you have. So if you're doing something like a quick check at the end of a class, and everybody can only do it once, and you're just waiting, and you know that there's 12 kids in your class, then when this hits 12, you'll know you're ready to go. The number will keep changing as the more and more students submit their assessment to you. So once you're here, there are a couple of choices. We're going to start though at the top. This green button will automatically take all of your scores and put them into a spreadsheet. So this can be useful if you're comfortable with spreadsheets. It gives you the answers to the questions. The questions on the top, the scores for each one, and the email addresses and the timestamp for the when they completed their assessment. It gives you all that data right here. Now, if you're only doing a couple questions, it might not be worth it, but it's good to know that you have that available to you if you so desire. The one below it is the accepting responses tab. If you've gotten every student in and you're all done for the day and you don't want them to be able to accept any more responses for any reason, then you just turn it off. And now that they can't, then you can add a message that says, hey, you're too late, sorry. It's all right here. So that is a very helpful little toggle to turn off and on depending on what exactly you're trying to do. The next three are the summaries, the questions, and the individual. And this is how you can view the responses and the data that you gleaned from your assessment. So first you've got insights, which is just a basic, like how many scores here, how many scores there. So you go 10, the points scored, sorry. 3 people got 10 points, 2 people got 0 points. So that means that you can glean that from there. Because I used a multiple choice question, they're only going to be able to get 10 points at first because I have to go in and assess. I have to grade the paragraph question. So it's 10 out of 20. You can see here, score out of 20, because each question was worth 10 points. I had two questions. This one was multiple choice, so it automatically scored itself. The other one was a paragraph down here, so I have to go in and score these. So let's talk about how you do that. There's 2 ways. You can do it by the question. Here it is. I can grade it here inside a question, put the score, the number of points in there. This person got it good. Oh, it was good. I can add a little feedback to it and say you're doing a great job. And then I hit mark as correct. Now this will show to students what their score was. So I have 2 apples, 2 apples. This person did fantastic. I don't want to keep pushing that button, so I'm just going to type 10 in there. This person did 10. They were good. Gonna hit it, put it, right? Now this person got the answer to before, but they didn't do it correctly. They did 3 plus 1 instead of 2 plus 2, so they don't get any points. And this person just put yep, so they get 0 points as well. So now their scores will change, and they'll be able to see now the ones that had correct will have 20 out of 20, and the ones that didn't will have 10 out of will have perhaps 10 out of 20 or 0 out of 20, depending on how they did on the rest of it. This is a great way to add feedback to things. In terms of a paragraph, you can add the feedback there. But if you have a multiple choice question, then you can see how many people answered each question and add feedback here. So if they got the question right and you wanted to give them some feedback, then you could give it to them then. If they got the answer incorrect, maybe you want them to watch a video or follow a link to do some more learning because they obviously don't have an understanding yet. So The other part is you can look at them individually, and this is where that where I said at the very beginning that having their email address in here is super important. You can organize it now by email address. If they did not collect the email, you wouldn't be able to see it this way. You would just have to toggle through each one individually. But for instance, what I have found is that if I'm using this as an exit ticket and I want students to be able to do this more than once, which is what I used when we were when we were in lockdown, 2 Marches ago or a March ago or whatever, and was teaching remotely from home. I wanted students to be able to kind of practice. I use this as a practice. They had to get all the questions right to be able to leave my Google Meet for the day. So when they came to class, we did our thing, whatever it was, and then they had to do the form at the end of class to be able to leave as an exit ticket, and they had to get all the questions correct. Now, if a student is doing this more than once, list is going to get incredibly long. So what I liked about being able to collect the email addresses was that I could go down to the last one and be like, okay, this must be the last one, and click it and check it, and they got all of them right. I could say, you're good, you can leave now, because they couldn't leave until I told them they were done. So this is why I feel like collecting email addresses is very important to be able to do. And it will because help you organize it, but also it tells you exactly who each of your students are. I go down here. Now I can also add points down there and hit save. And now the score is saved. I would hit release score. It will send me an email, which I do not want it to do, and it will tell me my total score for my assessment. If again, you can do it individual, and then you just go to the next one, and then you've got the name, and you say, okay, that's perfect. You get 10 out of 10, right? Save it and release the score, and the email will go to the PID. This is my preferred way of answering questions or of scoring students when I need to do it individually. I would rather do it individual because I can see their names and know exactly who I'm working with. So maybe I know we'll skip down to the third one where it's 3 dogs plus 1 dog is 4 dogs. Perhaps I know that there's some other issues going on here, and maybe I won't be as maybe I'll be a little bit more lenient in my scoring. I don't know. It depends on what you're doing. But when you put your score in there, you hit this person didn't get it, so I hit save, and now the scores are all there. Once you release them, then scores will all be there, and they'll be able to see how many points they got out of the total. You can print them if you want to, or you can trash all the responses and start over fresh. When you hit this, it will ask you if you're sure, because once you do this, you can't undo it. If you need to get rid of all the responses, you just hit yes. Otherwise, don't do that because you wouldn't want to have that. So that's how you check your responses. So I'm going to sneak back over here. Just here. Here we are. There's your responses. Here again is a bit of a cheat sheet to help you remember what each one of those does. So it's there for you if you need it. And that is it. That is the end of our time. So here's my email address. Send me a message anytime. Remember, my job is to help you, to work with you on whatever it is that you need to work with. So around technology integration. So if there's something that you're interested in and you want to spend some more time kind of diving into this, then that's fantastic. Let's do it. Or whatever it might be. Or I went too fast and you need to slow down and or you get stuck and it's like, this isn't working right. Send me an email. We'll set up a time to talk. You could also schedule it right here. The state uses this thing called bookings, which will give you a kind of a choice, and it will set up in my email or in my my Outlook calendar so that I know I have a meeting, and then I can get in touch with you via Zoom. You're welcome to follow me on Twitter as well. And if you have any questions or you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email or set up a meeting, a virtual meeting through Zoom through bookings. Whatever works best for you. I'm happy either way. Thank you so much for participating. I hope this works really well for you and that it makes your life significantly easier. Have a great day.